There you go. Hi, and welcome to another segment of Intersections Policy Program and Practice Exchange Holiday Edition. My name's Elisa William, and today I have the pleasure to be talking with Executive Director of Mental Health America, Andrew O'Grady, and Professor of Psychology and Director of the Center of Aging and Disability Policy at Mount St. Mary College, and co-founder of NOAR, the National Organization of Adult Addiction and Recovery, Dr. Larry Force. So how are you guys today?
We're doing pretty good, and thank you for making this happen. And we're glad to be back. Andrew, why don't you, maybe I'll lead into what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
My name is Dr. Larry Force, as Alyssa indicated, and I'm a professor of psychology at Mount St. Mary College and director of the Center on Aging and Disability Policy with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Jeff Kahana. Andrew O'Grady, who's the executive director of Mental Health America of Dutchess, he and I had a conversation, three of us, with Alyssa, back in April or so, and said, hey, this seems to be a platform that we know that there's been success of getting content information out during a COVID quarantine. So we lit up in June as the sun was coming up and it was getting warmer and the quarantine was becoming, less rigid because of the fact that people were able to go outside. And here we are, as the sun is not getting warmer, the daylight is getting shorter, it's getting colder, people are isolating, and we're back into wave 2, as it's called, of COVID quarantine. Prior to us coming on, we were talking about this, and we'll continue that dialogue. But I really feel as though that this is more anxiety provoking, especially for healthcare workers. First time they arrived on the scene, they didn't know what the scene was going to look like. And they are our heroes. They did incredible things. Now they're being called back to duty, but they know what they're walking into. And I think that creates more anxiety. And this is not a political show, but we can't act as though that the political dialogue back and forth, whatever arena you align yourself with, hasn't amped up the concern. And now here we are, coming into the holidays. We finished season 1 and we started to talk about the fact that, okay, we're going to plan season 2 come January, which we are planning to launch. But then we realized among the three of us having a conversation that, there's a real need here right now because there's so many mixed messages. And as we were talking prior to the recording of this video cast, the other concern is that people are isolating more, especially in the Northeast. And the whole focus of celebration surrounding the use of alcohol and drugs is being amplified. And this is really a tough time for many people. The overarching theme is we're here. We wanted to elevate the voice to a national level about addictions, recovery, and wellness. And I think we've been pretty successful at that from the acknowledgements we've received, both locally, statewide, and nationally. But there is such a need for this right now, for this discussion. Recovery doesn't have to be alone, even though it may not be the same way your perspective of social contact. And the virtual platforms have provided us with an opportunity to continue with these connections. So with that, one of the things we talked about, again, prior to coming on is the update, where we are, not only personally, but from our professional landscapes of what we see, both from the mental health and from the academic research perspective and the practice perspective, but also personally. So with that, I'd like to introduce my dear friend and colleague, Andrew O'Grady, who's the Executive Director of Mental Health America in Dutchess County. And
Thanks, Larry. I feel like I just want to get real during this conversation and just be who we are. When we first started this, like you said, if you look at the charts on COVID, it was down here and it was getting big and people were freaking out because it was down here, right? and we all shut down everything. You know, it's hindsight's 2020. I felt bad for people in upstate New York where there was one case and they had to shut all their businesses and, you know, school, but we didn't know. Nobody knew what was going on, and we did our very best to try to protect people. And we learned over the course of the summer what, you know, what feels comfortable, what doesn't feel comfortable. We started this because people were isolated in April. It was still cold. And then as the summer progressed, people felt more comfortable getting outside. They started doing outdoor things. We started eating outside. And here we are. It is now getting cold here in the Northeast. People, I can speak for myself. I'm not sitting on my back porch anymore. I'm not hanging out with people out there. Rarely have people come to the house. I do spend time with friends, but for instance, last weekend and this Friday, we're going to go up to Red Hook. There's this wonderful place where they have like 6 fire pits and you sit around, you separate from each other, and there's going to be a band, and that should be safe because we're outside and we're not near each other. But that's all going to go away soon. I don't care how big the fire is. I mean, if it's 20 degrees, I don't want to be outside. So we're all going to get stuck inside again. And when you look at that number back in April, it was here. And if you look at the chart, it's interesting how everybody was freaking out down here. But if you look at the chart right now, we're way up here. We're about 20 times higher infection rate right now than it was back when everybody was shut down for 2 weeks. And that's a little scary. And I think people are gonna realize that it's back, and it's back for vengeance. In the beginning of this, they all talked about the second wave from day one. I didn't understand the science of it. I believed it because this is all scientists saying it. And then, you know, you said it's not a political thing, and it isn't, but we got into this thing in this country where, is it real? Is it not real? And everybody got lax, and a lot of people got lax, and now we're in a bad place. And frankly, according to the scientists again, we shouldn't be this bad right now during the second wave. We're in the very beginning of the second wave. And we have a 2 or 3 months to go of bad stuff before this vaccine maybe hits the street for healthcare workers. So, you know, I'm glad we're doing this. I'm glad people are listening to us. I wish it was a call-in show and people could call in and talk to us, because I think people need to have a conversation. But I worry that, more and more people that we know are going to be affected by this. And, you know, we're going to have to deal with a lot of misery. And when I say we're hanging out with friends, think about what happens to most people. They hang around with friends, and most people feel like they have to have a drink in their hand, right? I mean, that's a normal thing. You may not have an alcohol problem, but you hang out with your friends, they come over, you go outside, you sit by a fire. Maybe that'll start going away, and people will drink less amongst their friends. But that's when you start drinking in isolation, when you find out you really need it. You start drinking alone. And before you know it, you come out of the winter, and now you got some big problems because you've just been inside pickling yourself. So, you know, that's why we're here to kind of talk about that and let people know that, you know, they should identify the signs and the concerns. Are you drinking before noon often? Are you drinking daily? Are you drinking by yourself? Are people concerned about you? Are you concerned about yourself? Because that's, we've talked about it many times. You know, you as the person know, you know, this probably is not good, but you're doing it anyway. So, you know, we hope that we can talk this through.
Right. You know, as you're talking, I recently wrote a blog that I sent to the two of you about the holidays, Thanksgiving. I mean, without COVID, this is an anxiety-provoking time.
Yeah.
You know, every individual is unique. Every family system is unique. Some people, they rally around the holidays. They can't wait to see everybody. Some families, they rally around the holidays and they can't wait to see everybody leave. You know, and in that blog, one of the things I mentioned is I had a discussion one time over, we had people over, and we ran out of milk for coffee and dessert. And I go to the local gas station, pick up a quart of milk. And I start talking to a deputy sheriff that's in there. And she's saying, I asked her, how you doing? And she said, I'm doing pretty good. And I can't wait to get off at 4 o'clock. And I said, why? And she said, because this is the holiday. You know, this is the one, even more than the Christmases and New Year's. And she said, this is the holiday. And I said, what do you mean? So people get together, they laugh for a little while, they're glad to see each other, they're drinking, they laugh some more, they're drinking, something said, they're not laughing, they're drinking some more, and before you know it, there's arguments. And before you know it, some people are outside rolling around on the front lawn, which, it does happen. And then the police arrive. She said, I can't wait till 4 o'clock because that's usually when it starts, like right after dinner. And because Thanksgiving is a holiday, as I indicated, is a holiday all to itself. You're not distracted by the unwrapping or the exchange of gifts. It's really about conversation, presence, food, and drink.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, we wanted to be clear about at the very beginning, we're not zealots that we're running around trying to close down drinking establishments and going back into prohibition. I heard somebody say one time that he wants people to drink. He wants them to drink water. He wants them to drink coffee. He wants them to drink soda. He just doesn't want them to play around with alcohol. And that's an interesting thing. It's not about drinking. And I've looked at, this question over a period of time. It's really not about drinking. People need to drink. Please don't, cut that. Please don't do like a cut, a film cut and say, oh, these two guys are doing this, video cast on alcohol. And one
This is
guy's
Larry. He's running for president. Listen,
right, running for president, and everybody should drink.
Everybody should drink. Yeah.
But everybody should drink. Okay, you need to stay hydrated. But it's drinking water, it's drinking coffee, it's drinking soda. But some people need to realize that the relationship with alcohol, the only thing that ends up with chaos, ends up with handcuffs, ends up with court, ends up with some type of row at home. It's just not a pretty sight. And who you are. That's the interesting thing. I mean, you might have people looking at you saying, what's going on? But you already know what's going on. The relation, and there was a whole movement at one point called moderation management. And moderation management was to be able to teach people to drink successfully again, reasonably again. And the founder of that movement ended up really ramping herself into a complicated life because of the fact that it's like I read one time the best way to cook a lobster. University of Rhode Island did this guidebook about the best way to cook a lobster. And they said the best way to cook a lobster is don't take the lobster and throw it in hot water. Cruel. Lobster knows he's been cooked. Take a lobster and put it in cool water and turn the heat up, little at a time. And eventually the lobster falls asleep and doesn't know he's been cooked. And the fact is, to me, that's like an addiction process. There's no one that wakes up on their 13th birthday and says, I cannot wait to be an out of control alcoholic. I am. That's my goal. It's a slow, insidious process. And before you know it, you're cooked. And the fact is, if you're thinking about it and obsessing over it and stuff like that, you probably know that there's an issue. Now, the question is how best to stop. Can people stop? Yeah, there's traditional routes of fellowship, the traditional 12-step programs. But that's not the only door. The good thing is that in our field, clinically, we're able now to have a reasonable discussion that there are multiple doors into sobriety. At one point, if you didn't go, and believe that the 12-step program was the only way, that conversation at times could become elevated. But we know today that there are multiple ways. But the beauty of, a 12-step fellowship community is that you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to do this alone. And I think that's one of the key messages that I'm so proud that the three of us have been able to get out. You don't have to do this alone. First season, who did we have come in? People that were, wrestling with addiction, celebrating recovery, policymakers, authors, family members, because as you said, this impacts so many people. It's an insidious disorder that impacts so many people. And I think that, the holidays, one of the things that we're going to be talking about over the course of this 5 videocast series is triggers. what do you do, okay, when all of a sudden, you're living life, because the fellowship programs talk about one day at a time. There's no guarantee that anybody is going to be able to raise their hand and say, I will never drink again. It's really a here and now. And I was taken one time, I went up to Cape Cod Institute to do this 5-day training on mindfulness as a therapeutic intervention. And the guy that was doing the training, he's a big deal. Out of Harvard, he and his brother have developed a presence in mindfulness, here and now, stay in the moment. And as he was talking, I was sitting in the auditorium, and I was just thinking, what he's really promoting is one day at a time. Stay in a moment. You wake up and the day's not going well, restart the day, stay in the moment. You wake up and the day's not going well. The one thing that I know personally, within my family system and professionally, everything passes. And that's the thing you really have to hold on to. And there's tools and resources. Alyssa's sitting here in the role of moderator, but much more than moderator. When I describe Alyssa and what she's done in the Hudson Valley, one of the things I talk about is, she started to blend in this, meditation stuff and, holistic approaches. But the one gift that she has brought to the Hudson Valley is when you walk into her door and then you start to meet the people that she has she, directly or with intention, connected. I don't think so. I think this thing just came together. But there's a whole collective of a network of people that believe that complementary approaches work. Personally, I'm never giving up my Western trained doctor. Okay, never. However, and I don't even call them alternative approaches because I'm not going from one to the other. But this idea of complementary approaches, the idea of the holistic stuff, whether it be meditation or whether it be yoga, whether it be the hyperbaric chamber or the salt cave, those things, I don't think that we can really talk enough about those. In one of the writings I did, I looked at the issue of mental health across the lifespan. And, it's interesting, early on, Greek philosophers, ancient theorists believed that this was a possession. Addiction was a possession. Supernatural, let's get the demons out. And then, the first psychiatric hospital, then the role of diagnoses. You and I, Andrew, know, because we're both licensed, the role of diagnoses. And the role is, if you don't arrive at a diagnosis, you can't get reimbursed from an insurance company. And the fact is that, that's a whole nother discussion for a later date about the role of insurance in defining what mental health and wellness looks like. But there are some theorists, one I practice is solution focus. They don't want to be distracted by diagnoses, and they don't center on a diagnosis. And then if you look at the continual history, the whole idea of the use of, psychosurgery back in the 30s and 40s, and then psychotropics back in the 50s, and we're still using, people come to me and they want to be referred to a psychiatrist. So they come to me for an evaluation to be referred to a psychiatrist. Personally, I have referred more people to gymnasiums than I have to psychiatry, and I don't have anything against psychiatry. But the fact is, somebody comes in and they're eating, 16 bags of potato chips, drinking 6 Cokes, and they feel bad. No kidding. You don't need me. You need a nutritionist, right? Because not everything is a psychiatric emergency. The whole value of this intersections exchange is to elevate the voice nationwide and reflect back onto the work that we're doing in collaboration with your agency, the work of the National Organization of Adult Addictions and Recovery, in collaboration with your Mental Health America agency, on a program called Intersections, a program without boundaries. But what's the real focus? The real focus is, you really had to peel everything away, finding new ways to entertain yourself, finding new ways to engage holistically, healthy. What's some of the focus? Movement, nutrition, wellness, time management, vision, goals, things that people really get distracted with when they're so absorbed with an addictive pattern. So I think that's, one of the themes that I'm really so happy that we're looking at the impact of the holidays overarching with COVID, dealing with addictions and recovery. Addictions you do alone. Recovery you don't have to do alone. You know, addiction is an isolating, self-defeating behavioral problem that becomes then a physiological issue. But recovery, come on out. Okay, there's communities here, virtual communities, real-time communities.
You know, the reason I'm leveraging MHA of Dutchess, my agency, to help with intersections is frankly because you're absolutely right. I mean, typically the people that our agency deals with are people that are attending clinic settings. They're not the wealthy people who are going to the private clinicians. They're people going to the clinics, and you have to throw a diagnosis on it. They all want you to see your psychiatrist for the medication. It's been the same process forever. And frankly, you know, there's not enough avenues and areas to try something different. And there's where intersections came along. And the reason I love this job, the reason I love working for a not-for-profit, and thankfully I'm the lead of this not-for-profit, is that I can leverage that and try new things. You know, we try new things at this agency all the time, and some of them stick and some of them don't. But I'd rather be on the cutting edge and promote something new and exciting. People need options to get better, and not enough clinicians like yourself refer to the gym or talk about alternatives. They immediately want you to get on your medication, and that just isn't. I agree with you 100%. Somebody should rule out the medical. You got to rule out that there's a medical reason for your feeling the way you're feeling. Once you rule that out, then add in some exercise, some walking, yoga, mindfulness. Try that stuff first before you hit the medications. And, you know, medications, I just talked to somebody today, and they talked about how they, you know, tried this medication, they tried that medication. You have to try 6 of them before something you know, works. Then you're doubling up, and now you're dealing with the side effects, and you're adding another medication for the side effects. It's you know, it may be necessary for some people, 100%, but let's try something else first. And if you don't feel comfortable doing the AA route, you know, that's not for everybody. That's not. It works really well for a lot of people, but it's not for everybody. So
I want to show you this. I want to show you this as you're talking. Full transparency, I am not a brand ambassador for the serotonin lamps, but I use this lamp all the time. I have a friend years ago.
I've never met anybody happier than that guy. So the lamp has something to do with it.
Come on, I carry this with me. Okay, I have 3 in my car. Okay. I have a friend from years ago. He was a research psychiatrist, which is very rare. Research, clinical, you know, basic research psychiatrist. And he had a colleague who was a comparative psychologist. Comparative psychologists look at animal models. And they did a study together. They drew blood samples, my buddy from his clients that were clinically depressed, and this other friend of his from hibernating bears. And they analyzed the blood profiles. And they saw so many similarities between people that were depressed, blood profiles, and hibernating bears. And depression is like a hibernation.
Yeah.
The month that I really don't like the most is this November coming into darkness month. That's why I put that serotonin lamp on. Mm-hmm. Am I sitting there with a pair of sunglasses, you know, 8 hours a day looking into it? No. But if I'm at my desk for a couple hours, I'll kick it on.
Yeah.
I worked with a psychiatrist who I really was very fond of. This guy was really good, and he had a great sense of humor. And one day he said, you know, Larry, I don't want any of my patients to be in convertibles. And I said, why? And he said, because it reduces their dependency on antidepressants. And what he was saying is that with sun, the value, you know, you talk about walking, you talk about drinking water, you know, those things. I've referred people to gymnasiums. I've referred people to Alyssa Center. Go down and get a massage. Mm-hmm. They'll get the prescription and run to the pharmacy, and like they're running a train, you know, they'll watch their clock. Every 4 hours they're going to take something. But if I say to them, why don't you go down and get a massage? You know,
Yeah.
why don't you get a bicycle? Go buy a bike and go out bike riding. They're hesitant to do that because, you know, the marketing is take this pill and everything's going to be magical. And we know it's not like that. Okay. And then, you know, your point's well taken. And here's the disclaimer. We're not against psychiatry.
Right.
There are people that really have flourished extremely, extremely well with a little bit of an enhancement of a psychotropic medication. No shame, no stigma. It works.
Yep.
But to take it and act as though that's all you have to do while you're not changing any of your behavior patterns is not going to be successful.
And working on the way you think, your thinking patterns and the negative thinking, the memory that's been played over and over and over your head, you got to change that tape. So there's a lot to do for people. I think that you're right. People, you know, their lives, I like what you just said about the, you know, every 4 hours, you're a slave to that thing you have to do, to take that pill and get some water. And, you know, it's interesting. A lot of people, you know, they need something to be a slave to that's negative, it seems. And, you know, why can't I listen, I'm the same way. I've already gained my winter weight. I mean, I'm not supposed to be this. I do this every year, and I'm at my post Christmas weight already. I find myself going home and I lay on the couch. I'm doing work on the couch and I watch TV, I watch the news, and I go lay in the bed and go to bed. It's ridiculous. I'm like more on my back than I am on standing up. And that is not good. And I think a lot of people are doing that now. They're home all the time. They're not getting out. So what can we do? And when you say, you know, walk, yeah, absolutely. That seems like the easiest thing in the world to do, right? Just go outside. I could check my phone while I'm walking. I put my earphones on when I'm walking. I could do a meeting while I'm walking. But do I do it? No. Why? You know, you have to motivate yourself. You have to. But people can motivate themselves to check the clock every 4 hours to take that pill. It's amazing.
I mean, I think it's an easier way. And also, you know, the marketing. My buddy, the psychiatrist that made that comment about, you know, no convertibles for his patients. I won't name the brand, but when a particular antidepressant came out on the market, within a week, a limousine was sitting out in front of his house to take him and his wife down to a top-notch hotel in New York City for 3 days, all expense covered, from a marketing pitch from this pharmaceutical company. And the fact is that it was a period of time that was the medication he was using. You know, so part of it is a marketing campaign too. And again, you know, hear us, you know, at the beginning, the middle, and now as we start to summarize our discussion today. But the fact is, we're not against psychotropics, you know, but that's not the only magical answer. And even I believe like the fellowship programs that are against the use of alcohol, I think they've even evolved to the fact that, you know, people can stop using alcohol and based upon, you know, psychiatric evaluation, that some medication might be helpful as they're in recovery. You know, it doesn't mean that you have to, you know, go cold turkey on everything, you know. So look, I think, you know, message delivered, you know, message accomplished, and that, you know, we're back. We took a 3-4 week little break, you know, planning for season 2 come January. And then the three of us, based upon conversations, said, hey, there's a real need to do this now.
Yep.
You know,
We have a great guest next week, and the week after, another great guest.
Yeah.
And
you're really, I'm telling you, the people are really going to be taken by the realness of the people that we have, you know, come on here. Because again, you know, you'll get the website Intersections Exchange, but the formal title is Intersections Policy, Program, and Practice Exchange, because we're looking at this from a variety of different landscapes, you know, from the policy perspective. I mean, one of the things that we talked about, Andrew and I had a quick conversation this morning, you know, with the change in the political arena. How's that going to look? How's, you know, the National Institute of Mental Health going to look? You know, the national institutes that deal with alcohol and drug. And what I mean by how they're going to look, how's that funding going to percolate to the surface to support innovation? You know, and you know, the other thing is that we couldn't have said this 30 years ago. We couldn't have even said this 20 years ago, but you're never alone. You know, you need to reach us, you reach us, okay? There's ways to reach us, you know, via our websites. There's ways to reach us. Andrew is the Executive Director of Mental Health of American Dutchess, 10 digits away, okay, regardless of zip code. I mean, the fact is, you know, you can't say, oh, I can't call them because of the fact that, you know, I don't live in Dutchess County.
Not true.
Not true.
People
I mean,
from all over the country call, and I'm happy to do what I can to help.
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, Andrew and Alyssa.
Yeah, thank you guys. I'm looking forward to the next 4 weeks as we bring this around the holidays and celebrate. And thank you for joining us today. You've been listening to Intersections Policy Program and Practice Exchange. And if you want to hear this program again, share it with friends or even comment on it. Log on to the Digital Resource Center on our website, www.intersections-exchange.org. And you can also on there follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
Hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you guys.